Behind me is the Hollywood side, and the interesting part about that is that the Druids used to make their magic wands out of the wood of the holly tree. And apparently we learned this fact from a very famous researcher named Jordan Maxwell. I wish he was here to verify that for us. Is that true, Jordan?
Well, you wish I was here, and here I am. Yes, it's true. But the Druid priests used magic wands. Magic wands were always made out of the wood of holly tree. It's made out of Hollywood. That's why we have something called the magic of Hollywood.
You know, you can get in trouble in Hollywood for knowing things you're not supposed to know, and especially if you talk about it in public.
You've been around in Hollywood for a long time. It was 1959 you came there, wasn't it?
Yeah, 59 when I came, yes. Almost 60 years ago. Next year, January of next year will be 60 years. I came to Los Angeles and Hollywood, and 60 years ago. Believe me, in that 60 years, I learned a lot. I met everybody. I knew all kinds of movie stars and impressive and important people in the entertainment world, especially musicians and rap artists and major people.
This age is coming to an end. Not the world, but the age is ending. Listen to the astrological message I'm sending. Truth is truth, whether or not they like me. We are living now in the age of Pisces, but Pisces will be over at the year 2000. Actually, a few more years. When the Son of God changes its house and enters the age of Aquarius.
I know that you have been in the company of extraordinary people, but just so the folks on the other side of the screen watching know this, I mean, you've been in contact with the Wu-Tang Clan, who made a song about you.
The end justifies the means. The end is power. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. Young black men, let us begin. The end.
For the average person out there, they've never heard this term. Jordan, explain to people what Illuminati means.
Well, it comes from, the word Illuminati comes from the Latin word illumini or illumin, which it means light. And so anyone who is enlightened or brilliant, and of course those who are the most enlightened are called brilliant.
You've also been in contact with Ice-T, Ice Cube, you've met Michael Jackson. I mean, you've had all kinds of people behind the scenes that said that are fans of your work, that you inspired them, that everything that you said had woke them up. And to bring this back a little ways, when did this start taking off for you in Hollywood? When did you become really well known?
I would say 1980, 1989, 1980. 87, 88, 89, right around there.
Yes, and that was after Matrix of Power came out, right?
Mm-hmm, that's right.
I think at one time or another we've all questioned as to whether all that we see and are experiencing in our world has some sort of a rational plan behind it. Because we understand now that both the Republican and the Democratic Party in our country are basically run by the same people. The same money finances both sides.
And when Matrix of Power came out, the movie that you'd released that was shaking the core of everybody, there was also a book that accompanied this and others that would follow from Book Tree Publishing. And that was, during those times, was that when you became friends with Shirley MacLaine?
No, that was a bit later. That was about 10 years later, about 1999.
Wow.
Yeah. And, but I had a person who wanted to promote me because he wanted to make a lot of money off of me. And I knew that he was seeing movie stars. He was seeing me in the company of all kinds of important people in Hollywood. So he got it in his mind that if he got in business with me, he would be brought into all of these important people that were calling and contacting me. And so he wanted to put up the money to promote me. And he did. He put up a lot of money to promote me. And he made a deal with a television producer. I don't know where he met him, but he made a deal with a very interesting and very, very clever and resourceful young man who was a television producer from Sweden. The guy was Swedish. His name was Leonard Martinson. And Leonard was an award-winning, top-of-the-line, #1 kind infomercial producer. Tony Robbins became very, very famous and very successful because Leonard Martinson was his producer. And so Leonard, filmed him and put him and put the whole production together to promote Tony Robbins. And so that was the guy who's promoting me, was Leonard Martinson.
It's a fascinating thing that people might not know this about you, but you were this great legend around Hollywood that going into the back of Warner Brothers studios, you were giving them lectures about the Illuminati and
I used to go to some of the studios late at night and give slide presentations with a little Mickey Mouse slide projector and slide projections about Illuminati, secret societies, the Federal Reserve.
So you'll see the men's is a triangle, a pyramid, fire in the middle. Then behind you is the woman's symbol. The circle. The circle represents Stonehenge. And Stonehenge represents the magic circle, which of course is the sun, and the woman represents the spiritual circle of life. Because without the woman, there would be no human life. So without the female, there is no circle of life. There will, when we all die, there's no women giving birth, and we're all going to be dead. So she is the one that keeps the circle of life alive. As long as she's giving birth, children are being born.
The secret societies in the underworld, organized crime, in the U.S. government, how the U.S. government was run by organized crime. And I had all the documents and all the pictures and all the background and connections. And I knew some of the big names in Hollywood who knew the real story. And so I used to do those kind of slideshows in Hollywood at the motion picture studios when this was back in the 1960s, when most people didn't know what I was talking about. But today, that kind of story is now the leading kind of stories you will see in motion pictures today. The Knights Templars, National Treasure, Da Vinci Code was the kind of stuff I was talking about back in 1960.
The symbols are a language that can help us understand our past. As the saying goes, a picture says 1,000 words, but which words?
And 61, 62, 63, I was talking about secret societies in U.S. government and talking about the assassinations squads that are operating in the U.S. government to assassinate political leaders. And the very day I was going to give that lecture in downtown Hollywood, John F. Kennedy was assassinated. You can imagine, I'm thinking, my God, what an incredible situation. I'm going down to give this big lecture about secret societies and assassinations. And here the President of the United States was just assassinated. And I thought to myself, see, that's what I'm talking about.
It's
nobody,
incredible. And you got to be in the presence of some extraordinary people that were also in the teaching field around Los Angeles, around Hollywood. I mean,
oh, heavens, yes, heavens, yes.
we know you had a history over at the Philosophical Research Society in Los Feliz with Manly Palmer Hall. Jordan, can you tell us what it was like being here in the days of Manly P. Hall?
Well, it was an oasis of wisdom and knowledge. Mr. Hall was my personal friend. He went out of his way to do wonderful things for me, and I appreciated his friendship so much. He was very, very generous to me. He was a wonderful, brilliant man. And most people today are not fit to tie his shoes who present themselves to the world as spiritual teachers. He was the most spiritual man I ever met. He was a brilliant man.
Did you ever walk through this library with him?
Yeah, well, this is just the public part of his library. He has a private library, which you can't go see. In another part of the building, it's his private library. That's where the good stuff is.
There was a famous Christian orator that was quite unique out of Glendale. Can you tell us about him?
Yeah, he was the most sensational, intellectually superior human I have ever met in my life. He was the only man that ever walked this earth that called himself a Christian minister that I personally had the highest of regard for. I was fascinated with this man's mind. He was an incredibly brilliant guy. And he would talk about things in relation to the Bible that nobody's ever heard before and tie it into Adolf Hitler, Nazism, world communism, the United Nations, international Illuminati secret societies, and the Christian religion and how it all started and who was financing the church around the world and the connections between the Nazis and the international banking cartels in America. He was the most startling man I have ever heard in my life. And I was so impressed with him. I had nothing to do with Christianity, but I was so impressed with him. I wasn't following Christianity, I was following him.
And of course, you're referring to Dr. Gene Scott, that he was wearing all these incredible funny hats and moving around the stage, smoking cigars, just off the wall topics. It's an incredible
off the wall stuff. He would sit there and smoke a big Cuban cigar with the sunglasses upside down, and he would wear all kinds of silly hats and strange jackets, and anything that would make you think that he was loony. And he said publicly on television, I do these things because I know it offends Christians. And I want to offend Christians. I want to offend them. Why? Because they offend me. They want you to unscrew your head and take your brain out and put it on the table and then screw your head back on and take your brain out, and now you can become a Christian. I say, he used to say it, but I say, no, you need your brain. That's why God gave you a brain. You need to learn how to go to a school and learn how to read, learn how to think intellectually, superior thinking, research everything, and don't buy into nothing you don't know what you're talking about.
Is it fair to say then, from where Dr. Gene Scott took off from, and where Manly Palmer Hall took off from, that there he was, inspiring the minds of people and firing up their interests, that you took off from that point and you started teaching folks, and that brought you into the company of guys like Bill Jenkins and others who are very famous also.
That's right.
That brings us to another subject here, Jordan, because people know that you have been in the company of guys like George Lucas, like Michael Eisner of Disney, with these famous producers. You've been involved all across Hollywood, all across Burbank and these places, lecturing, talking to folks.
I came out with a book called Matrix of Power, the secret societies behind the world that we live in and how they control everything going on. And a few years later, a movie came out called Matrix. And everybody was talking about Matrix, but nobody seemed to remember it was Jordan Maxwell who came out with the book called Matrix of Power.
That's exactly right. And you know what? You came out with this information. You were lecturing about it. You were teaching people. But here's the thing people want to know. When we see Hollywood, and we've heard about productions like Eyes Wide Shut, we've heard about these sort of secret societies and strange rituals and dark practices and things going on behind the scenes in Hollywood that people have always suspected went on.
Yeah, like the sexual stuff with the women that were raped by the big producers and directors and big shots who were running Hollywood.
We've heard about that stuff, absolutely. And I thought I would ask you, first of all, about some of that stuff that's been alleged to have gone on, because, you know, when we go look up at places like the Greystone Mansion, where we were not too long ago, you've said that some things have gone on there that were very strange. Do you want to talk about
very scary stuff? Greystone Mansion is in what we call West Hollywood. It's right there at the beginning of West Hollywood. It's on Sunset Boulevard. And you go down Sunset Strip until you come to the end of Hollywood, and now you enter into what is called Beverly Hills or West Hollywood. And you're on Sunset Boulevard. You turn and go north 1 block, and you see a huge mansion, an enormous mansion on the side of the mountain. And it was owned by Old Man Doheny. Doheny, and that's the name of a street that goes up to Greystone Mansion. It's called Doheny Street. And Doheny was the name of the old man who set up what was the first big oil corporation in the world. He knew how to run the whole world on oil. And so he was very, very wealthy. Obviously, he must have had some very serious enemies because he had family members that were murdered at the Greystone Mansion. And so it very well might have been maybe the son of whoever it was that was murdered, because of their being in a wealthy family, got involved in some cults that they couldn't get out of and were murdered because of it.
Do you think this was anything like the Manson family?
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I'm talking about. I think it was something that maybe his son got involved in, something like the Manson family. Or it was one of Doheny, the old man's enemies. God knows he could have some big enemies around the world as a very wealthy oil man. And so he left the house at Greystone Mansion. He left to the city of Los Angeles. He just donated it.
Jordan, can you tell me what you told me the other night about the connection between California and Russia?
Yeah, originally the state of California, the landmass we call California, was owned by Russia. Russia owned California. I think it was called the California-Russia Corporation. And Russia actually owned California at one time. And that's why today on the California state flag you will see the Russian bear and the communist red star. You go to the communist empire of Russia, go to the Soviet Union and Russia, and you will see a big red star in the Kremlin. A big red star, 5-pointed star on the top of the Kremlin. That's what's on the California state flag. The Russian bear and a 5-pointed communist star.
Are there any extraterrestrials living under Los Angeles?
My God, there's probably tons of them. Wouldn't be a bit surprised how many.
Do you remember what you told me about Mount Shasta and Magic Mountain? Did you ever hear anything about that?
Yeah. Magic Mountain. It's called Magic Mountain because the Native Americans said the place was crawling with extraterrestrials. They called it Magic Mountain.
And so I used to go to the Doheny Mansion because it's so enormous. And I would go there in the mornings and I'd sit by his pool and read and study, and I'd bring my history books with me, and it was always beautiful and quiet, and the birds were out, and it was a warm, sunny day. I'd go down there and sit by his pool and read all day long. I read all kinds of interesting history books, and just being in that surroundings of a massively beautiful multi-million-dollar mansion. It just led me to be interested in international power, oil magnates, and the robber barons, and all kinds of interesting secret societies that were running the world. And so I used to go inside. I even went inside the mansion. There was a time when you could go inside the mansion. You can't do it anymore.
Yeah, do you remember that you also would take us to the places over the years that we would go to, these cemeteries that we'd find over by Burbank or Glendale, and there's beautiful, peaceful, gorgeous areas there that you can read.
Yep,
what did you used to come here to do?
To sit and meditate and read. I like coming to a quiet place where there's nobody around, at a cemetery, and sit and read. Because this way I can not only read in peace and quiet, but it's also peaceful and quiet, so I can think about what I'm reading and analyze what was being said. Gave me a lot of time to think about things.
What was your favorite book to bring up here and read?
Fire in the Minds of Men.
The name of the cemetery was called Forest Lawn, but they had about 5 of them. They have big, huge, like, I don't know, like maybe a mile square.
Yes.
That big, like a mile square, sometimes bigger, of a cemetery, but it was absolutely phenomenally, brilliantly done. Beautiful cemeteries. I used to go up to Forest Lawn in the mornings with these big, thick history books and sit up there and around the beautiful flowers and the beautiful, the little waterfalls, etc. Just a very, very beautiful place, this cemetery. And I go up there and sit and read all day long by myself. Nobody to bother me, no phone calls, nobody to bother me. And I'd sit and read and make notes and take notes down and then come back home and record the notes. And then I spent most of my life at UCLA. There was a time when I was just practically living at UCLA, to their international big library. It was 7 stories high. Most of it was underground, and a large part of it was underground. In their research department, it was a federal and state depository at UCLA. The federal government had a private depository at UCLA. And at UCLA, there was also underground, a state of California depository of all the important documents of government was stored at UCLA.
Wow.
So you go downstairs and go into these glass offices downstairs that have glass walls. Everything was glass. This way, all the security people could see everybody walking around and watching everybody. Anybody doing something, they could see them because it was a very, very important place. All federal documents were there. They had handwritten letters from Abraham Lincoln, handwritten letters, handwritten documents from famous people in U.S. history. at UCLA is called the Special Collections. And I used to go to special collections all the time and photocopy documents and letters from presidents and secret societies. And they had an enormous library upstairs, like 6 or 7 stories high. And each time you go up to one, you get on the elevator, I go up to, say, the 3rd floor and get off, and there's as far out as you can see. As far out as you can see is nothing but millions, it look like millions of books. Just incredible, hundreds of thousands of books. As you walk down the aisles, you can see the aisles just going continually. It's like the Vatican Library. It's just incredible.
That explains a lot, because when you're talking to people, it's like they're reading 7 or 8 different libraries full of books that are coming out. But speaking of libraries too, when we were leaving Manly Palmer Hall's library there at PRS, we were going up our usual route up to Griffith Park and going up to the Hollywood sign and all those places. You've taken me to a little place called the Bronson Caves on the backside of the Hollywood side. And you told me a story that was quite gruesome and barbarous. Could you tell us about that?
There's an enormous cave up there in the mountains. You have to know where to go to find it. And I was taken up there by a guy who worked in Hollywood for one of the big studios, and he drove the trucks where they carry all their equipment for making movies. And so he taught me a lot.
What did he say about the Bronson Caves when you guys were there? Did he have any dark stories for you about them?
Yeah, I learned about the Bronson Cave from him. He took me up there, and we parked the car. If you remember what we did, we parked the car, and then you have to walk up this long path going up into the mountains until you get up to the very top. There's not maybe a block or two, a couple of blocks. And then you see this big, huge mountain, and then beneath it is this cave. And you walk through the cave, and it looks like these caves that were used in Star Trek and any of these sci-fi movies where they're on another planet, and they are Mars, and they're in a cave in the movies and television shows. No, it's called the Bronson Cave. You go up there and you go through it yourself. And I went up there a couple of times in the morning by myself once I knew about it. I go up there, and I got up there one morning when they were shooting a movie, a sci-fi movie. And I was watching them, and it was really interesting watching them shoot a sci-fi movie. I think it was like Star Trek or one of those sci-fi movies where they were on another planet, supposedly on another planet, and they were going into this strange cave and seeing all these extraterrestrial creatures. And it was really interesting sitting back and watching them shoot the movie, how they were doing it.
When I was with you on one of our visits up to the Bronson Caves, we went there and they were filming a music video, and they had the blue smoke and they were dancing around. But I remember even when we saw that there, you told me something that was very shocking, very frightening to the average person. You said that up there, that you have been told this before, and I know that this is the case because there's newspaper records of this. This has been covered by the media, that there were the remains of sacrifices, animal sacrifices and otherwise, that they have found, that the police uncovered, the people were coming there, distinguished members of society were coming there doing all kinds of strange things very late at night up in those Bronson Caves.
And they had paintings inside the cave, had paintings on the wall of extraterrestrial vehicles, aliens, little aliens, giants, all kinds of paintings on the wall. And then toward the back of the cave that was opening to a little opening behind the mountain, they had all these demonic symbols of devil worship. And they had surrounding fires where there had been fires before, the night before. and where they had been holding demonic sacrifices up in the mountains. So, yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in Hollywood that people just do not know. I've been around so many times, I've been around Hollywood when I see them making a movie, and so I just park the car and walk over and get close and watch them making the movie. I happened to be coming down Ventura Boulevard in Studio City one morning, and I saw there was a lot of commotion in a parking lot in front of a big grocery store, big supermarket. And I wondered what was going on with all these people all around. And then I parked the car and I walked over to see what was going on, like everybody else. And I walked into the parking lot, and people were standing around the parking lot. Me, I walked into the parking lot, and there was Jackie Coogan behind a car with a gun and firing at somebody, firing at some other people. They were on the other side of the parking lot with some guys over there behind the car, and they're firing back at him. And I thought, God, I'm going to get hit. I don't want to get hit in this. And so I came up behind him and scooched down behind Jackie Coogan. And he's firing at this guy. And Jackie Coogan turned around. He says, "This is a movie set." And I felt about that big.
Jordan, what is the relation to the 76 gas station logo and the sun?
Well, the sun, we say, goes in a revolution. It revolves around the earth, so we say it's revolution. And so 1776 was the American Revolution. So that's why the 76 gas company says, get the spirit of 76. What are you talking about, get the spirit of 1776? Get the spirit of revolution, to revolt against the other companies and do business with Union 76 station. So get the spirit of revolution, get the spirit of 1776.
Where would you say then, if there was one place that you were shown by your friend that was doing the truck driving, that where there was darker occult activities going on that we hear about, this sort of stuff where people are doing sacrifices and all that sort of things, those terrible things, where would you say in Hollywood that took place?
Eagle Rock. Eagle Rock is a little town, very small, Eagle Rock, and it's right there north of Glendale, California. And Eagle Rock has had a lot of strange things happening in Eagle Rock, where children go missing, human sacrifices are talked about. I've talked to police department people, the people in the Los Angeles Police Department, have talked with me. I talk with them. And I belong to the press club, Los Angeles Press Club. And so every time there's something happening, because I'm in the press club, I can get in, go in, talk to the police, and they accept me in because I'm a member of the press club. And I talk with the police, and they tell me what happened and what was going on and what they found, etc. And so I just think it's an incredible story.
What about Mulholland Drive and Laurel Canyon?
They made a movie called Mulholland Drive. It's so famous up there because there is Los Angeles, the big city of Los Angeles. And then there's a mountain range going from way east, going further west out to the ocean, that divides Los Angeles from the other side of the mountain, which is the San Fernando Valley. And the way to get from one side of the mountain to the other was through Laurel Canyon. So Laurel Canyon became a very heavily traveled street going through the mountains. And as you go through Laurel Canyon, you go and you will hit at the top of the mountain. There was a highway running around off the top of the mountain all the way down the mountain range. There was a very heavily traveled street that connected the Hollywood Hills. And you cross that. If you go from San Fernando Valley to Los Angeles, you go up Laurel Canyon and you would cross Mulholland Drive. And Mulholland was named after, from what I gathered, from an Indian chief many, many, many years ago. And so you're going to cross Mulholland when you're on Laurel Canyon. And when you cross Mulholland, that is a strategic place in Los Angeles for a lot of strange occult stuff going on, because all of the top people in the music industry during the 50s and the 60s and 70s, all the drug-related crimes, all the drug-related music, all of that kind of stuff in the MK Ultra government, U.S. government mind control was being played with up in the Mulholland Drive as it crossed Laurel Canyon. And a lot of governmental conspiracy stuff was going on with music and prostitution for government.
What about, you said Nazism came from there before?
Yeah, Nazism was born and raised and developed on Laurel Canyon at Mulholland Drive. There was some very powerful Germans and Austrians who had enormous homes up there in the mountains of Hollywood Hills up on Laurel Canyon and Mulholland. And they were the brains behind the Nazi party. And so much of what Adolf Hitler was promoting came from Laurel Canyon, because some of the most powerful German Nazi types that were financing Adolf Hitler and directing him were living up on Mulholland Drive in Laurel Canyon. Well, that's all right, because if you understand, the CIA was also heavily involved up on Laurel Canyon and Mulholland Drive. And so was the mafia. So was the organized crime in the music industry. And that, God knows, that's exactly what it is. The music in Hollywood was organized crime.
All the leaves are brown, leaves are brown, and the sky is gray, and the sky is gray. I've been for a walk on a winter's day, on a winter's day. I'd be safe and warm, safe and warm, if I was in LA, if I was in LA. California dreaming on such a winter's day.
New movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which of course this video just coincidentally happens to be named. It shows Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio. They're going out on these movie sets and adventures out in Hollywood. It shows one of your favorite restaurants that you like to frequent.
It's called Musso Frank's.
What's the best thing to get here on the menu?
The only thing on the menu is the flannel cakes, which are a particular kind of hot cake called flannel cake. And they're delicious. That's why we come all the way to Hollywood to have breakfast, because there's no place like this in the world. Musso Frank's.
You ever see movie stars here?
Talking to one.
And the other restaurant, of course, that is your favorite is out in Burbank, which is Pinocchio's or Monte Cristo's, which we absolutely love and have to eat it every single time.
We're having our favorite lasagna, and this place is amazing.
Look at this. Oh, there's all kinds of strange stories that you have connected to these restaurants. And one of those places that's still standing is Bob's Big Boy Diner, which is very interesting because coming up, we have a very special conference that's going to be featuring you next year, February 15th to the 22nd. It's going to be in Laughlin, Nevada. It's the Laughlin UFO Mega Conference. And there you're going to be giving just mind-blowing and incredible talks to people and sharing with them all kinds of amazing research. But we have a special treat for people there. And it's connected to the experience that you had at this diner. We're going to be showing them a small film. Everybody can come out and see us at the Laughlin UFO MegaCon. That's Laughlin UFO Mega Conference. Over 30 speakers. It's going to be featuring Jordan Maxwell. It's going to have guys like Jay Widener, Daniel Brinkley, Paul Tice, Brad Olson, Brian Forrester, Muhammad Ibrahim, and many others. You got to absolutely come out, get your tickets. Jordan Maxwell is going to be featured there giving his magnum opus talk. This is going to be absolutely mind-blowing. And Jordan, leading up to the talk coming up, you and I are going to be doing more of these weekly videos. We're going to be discussing some of the occult symbolism that people have never heard and stuff that's absolutely going to blow their minds coming into this particular thing.
This conference is going to be very impressive, very important conference. Laughlin in February of next year. Not that long to go. It's coming pretty quick. We're in December. This is going to be the first of next year. In February, you got to make the plans now to be in Laughlin, Nevada in February, about the 15th. 50 miles south of Las Vegas. I say that over and over again, so that you can go on a map and look on the map of Nevada and look at Las Vegas, and then let your eyes go down about 50 miles down on the Colorado River, and you will see a little town called Laughlin. That's where we're going to be, and that's where you need to be, because it's going to be one extraordinary experience. Hearing people from all over the world talking about things which are going on that nobody knew anything about. And it's going to be one incredible experience. And I'd love to see you there.
And of course, next year, also from March 16th through the 29th, we're going in the Ancient Mysteries Tour of Egypt. This is actually the Ancient Stargates part of it. And you can go to ancientmysterytours.com and you can get more information about that. You can register and book. Jordan Maxwell is going to be giving a very special presentation on this tour. You do not want to miss that either. And everybody, if you haven't seen it already, Jordan, we have to tell these guys at home about the #1 show on Gaia right now featuring you, which is The Secret Life of Symbols. It is absolutely amazing and very well done how you just poured out all of this brilliant esoteric knowledge from years of immersing yourself into the dark world of the occult, of commerce, of how these symbols work, and secret societies work. How can people find you on the web?
You go on the web to Jordan, like the Jordan River in Israel. Jordan, Jordan. Maxwell, Maxwell, Jordan Maxwell. And my website is Jordan Maxwell Show. Don't forget the word show. You won't get to me without that. So it's jordanmaxwellshow.com. And when you go to jordanmaxwellshow.com, that's my website. And it's a very plain website, nothing fancy. There's just a lot there, a lot on it, but it's very plain. I try and make it as simple as possible. I don't do anything. I have a webmaster who is a master at being in computers. And he is a dear, dear friend of mine who's helped me immensely. And he keeps track of my website for me and takes care of it for me. It's called Jordan Maxwell Show. And you will be shocked to see how much information is really on that website. But there, when you go to Jordan Maxwell Show, you will see, the first thing you'll see is a little flyer, a little note, a little flyer that says, join my research website. I have two websites. My original is Jordan Maxwell Show, and the second one is Jordan Maxwell Research website. You have to join my research society. It's a one-time donation to the website, a one-time donation, small.
And that's a wrap.